Hey guys, welcome to the Positive Experience Podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in living your best life. Today's segment is on the hard slog, where we shine the light on small local businesses. Hey guys, welcome aboard to the Positive Experience Podcast. I've got Joel McComber here with us. Howdy, Joel. How are you?
Well, thanks, Lucky. How are you?
Hey, mate. Now, for everyone at home, this is actually our first face-to-face conversation. So, we're just like two blokes at a pub, just having a chat, getting to know each other. We did have an opportunity to say hello, but our paths didn't cross a couple of weeks ago at the Pacific Connections Expo. So, big shout out to Kylie and the team over there. They did a great job. It was an extraordinary day. So, Joel, I'd just like to start off our chat today, mate, by just giving you the microphone and giving us your origin story, mate. Tell us a little bit of where you grew up and your background.
Yeah, so I was born on the Gold Coast, Queensland. So my father is, the reason I am kind of connected with the Pacific community is my father is roughly half Fijian. So both his parents are roughly half Fijian. So I'm a little bit Fijian. Not that you can tell. Bula Vinaka. So I grew up in Queensland, moved to Brisbane when I was about 2 or 3 years old, and I've lived here ever since. Went to high school, went to uni, kind of studied law, not because I necessarily wanted to be a lawyer, but because it was the thing that people told me I should probably do. And I started working as a lawyer in 2014, 2015. Worked in personal injuries law, which wasn't really my thing. And then in July 2017, I started working in immigration law, and specifically complex migration law, so things like visa cancellations and visa refusals because of criminal offending and things like that. And also doing a lot of work with New Zealand citizens from across Australia, because New Zealand citizens have a very interesting position in Australia's migration law system. So over the past 2 years and 9 months, I've basically been doing that, and I've loved it.
Awesome. Before we dive deep into the law stuff, the migration law, which is really top of the heap for our Kiwi friends, just tell us a little bit about the high school experience for you, mate. Like, did you have family that was already engaged in law, or were you kind of the first real person to pursue this avenue?
Yeah, no, so neither of my parents are lawyers. My brother is actually a teacher now. My parents are kind of in accounting and finance. So,
Okay.
High school was good for me. I went to Brisbane State High School, which is a bit like Melbourne High and Sydney High. It's a selective high school. Played a lot of rugby.
Yeah.
Did okay at school. Got to the end of school and it was kind of like, okay, you can do law. That's a thing you should do. Thought, okay, it sounds good.
Wow, you must have been a gun at school then.
Tried really hard. Sometimes you get, I feel bad about talking like that, but I did try hard, but good. I feel bad when I kind of speak to other people and see kids now who are really motivated to get into a career and they try their best. And like the amount of stress they're under. And I'm like, if I was under that much stress when I was at high school, I don't know I would have been able to kind of do as well as I did. So it's one of those weird things where I think sometimes I see kids now who go into high school and they ask me, I want to be a lawyer and things like that. Yeah. And they're so motivated and passionate about it that like there's so much stress on them. I'm like it's like naturally. It's just like I don't, I'm like, just calm, do your best, don't psych yourself out about it, Yep. But then, I like school. Like I like learning about things. Even now, like I am far more interested about learning new things than I am about kind of practicing the law. So that was good for me at school. Not so good for me now that I'm a lawyer because I get very distracted learning about, rockets. Yeah, exactly. I know you're into kind of health and stuff, so like reading like books like I don't know if you've read Max Lugavere's book or his new one I haven't read yet, but about genius foods and things like that, and different nutrition books and stuff like that. Yeah, so I spend a lot of time doing that when I probably should be working more.
I think you should follow where your curiosity takes you. I think that's a good trait. We should always be lifelong learners.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
But unfortunately, you have to try and rein it in at some point and actually do some work, is what people tell me. So,
especially when you have a specialisation in law. And just before I let you run away with the Brisbane State High School, I actually went to Melbourne High School here, so we have a similar vein. What position did you play?
So I started off as a prop when I was in grade 8. But then I stopped growing, so I made my way to like flanker, and then it finished off at like inside centre, flanker, kind of in there.
Okay.
So,
any gun rugby players from Brisbane State that are up there now that you played with?
So Paul Aluamil, who was a prop, I think he played for the Rebels actually. Yeah. So he was down there. So he was the year below me at school, but his brother Eric, who was a pretty good friend of mine in high school, was one of the more interesting guys I knew, because he was a massively physically talented guy, and obviously, he had good, genes. He's like had a brother who played for the Wallabies, but Eric just could not be. But like his email address in high school was like, I couldn't be bothered or something like that. He just people would be upset and being like, you could be, you could
anything you want to be.
Rugby. He was like, I don't know, like I don't want to do it. But I heard something about him recently. Now he's in IT, like setting the world on fire in IT, and I was like, that's cool, good on him. I was like, that's I always respected him for that. I was like, yeah, don't let other people force you into being what they think you should be. Do what you want to do.
There you go, mate. Following your curiosity. I think we touched on this just before. All right, so let's transition over to Century Law then. So you led us into a particular niche within law. So like in health, there's different specialties, and you had been drawn to immigration law, may have been from your experience in the family, having, a 16th Fijian in there somewhere. But
pizza slice,
yeah. So was there a particular case that thought, oh man, this is really interesting, you followed your curiosity down this pathway, or was there an opportunity because it was underserved in the marketplace? Like, how'd you land on immigration law?
Yeah, so my cousin, Jennifer Samuda, she's also a migration lawyer with a firm up in Brisbane. She introduced me to it, and I got a taste for it and thought, this is interesting, this is new, this is, it's also helpful because a lot of the work you do in the law isn't necessarily life-changing for other people, or it's not, or it might be life-changing, but it's not interesting. But the work that I do now with the visa cancellations is not only very interesting and very specialized, but also it does have a direct effect on people's lives, which is both a blessing and a curse, because on the one hand, you get to do something meaningful, which is important to me, but on the other side, you have to kind of learn to live with that level of pressure and responsibility on you when these people and their families and their kids and their parents, are all kind of hinging on the outcome. So there's no days off. Well, and you got to try and balance that in terms of your, having a healthy approach to that, being mindful of what you can do and what you can't do, what the limits are, how you're going to be able to like maintain the level of, work and service over a long period. Because for the first few years of the first period of doing it, it was a big struggle to be able to kind of do your best work, but not become so emotionally invested that when you did get negative results, which are inevitable, letting it really drain you and, just kill your motivation to keep going. So that's been something I've had to learn, but I'm slowly getting there and evening my approach out.
Man, that's heavy. Is there like a standard, so for example, in the physio space, there may be a standard approach to someone who comes in complaining of a shoulder injury. So you go through your standard Q's and A's, you can sort of, depending on your answers, it can sort of filter me through a process on how I treat you. What would be like an example of a standard case of our Kiwi friends? Say 80% of your case, 80% of the work is this type of person or this type of case. What would that case study be?
So one of the difficulties is that there's a few different ways that a visa could be cancelled under the Migration Act, and what you have to do to respond to them is pretty different. So it can be you have to respond within 20 minutes or you have to respond within 28 days.
Wow.
So a lot of the work that we see now is in December 2014, the government changed the law so that any non-citizen who has been sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 12 months or more and then has to serve time in prison has their visa automatically cancelled. So that covers quite a large number of people because those two elements don't have to cross over. So you could have been, when you were younger, and lucky I'm sure this wasn't you, but when you were younger, you might have got in some trouble. Had a judge who went, look, I'm going to teach you a lesson because you're young and I don't want you to do this again. They give you a 12-month sentence of imprisonment, but suspend it wholly or put you on parole. So you never actually have to go into prison and serve that sentence.
Yeah.
Let's say 10 years later, you get in some more trouble and you only have to serve 1 month of imprisonment. Well, because you've already got a 12-month sentence and you now have to serve a day in prison, your visa is going to be automatically cancelled. So this law captures not only people who have committed offences recently and had to serve imprisonment, but people who have committed offences kind of a long time in the past and have committed like a relatively minor offence now. They're being caught up in it as well. So in answer to your question, a lot of the time, a lot of the inquiries we get are from people or families of people who are in prison, who've had their visas cancelled, and they've got to then go through a process of asking that the Minister for Immigration set aside that cancellation and give them back their visa.
Federal level.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. There's not much recourse. Like you can't. It sounds like they're swinging the sledgehammer there.
It is. So the way they do it is if you fall into that category. Now there's a different category where if you've been sentenced to multiple sentences of imprisonment that add to 12 months or more, or if the minister decides that you may be likely or are likely to commit a criminal offence in the future, which is a very wide and ambiguous definition. But if the minister forms that view, they can also cancel your visa and give you 28 days notice to respond to that. But if you fall into that mandatory or automatic visa cancellation process, you get told you've already had your visa cancelled, you've not got to prove to us why you should get your visa back, and you've got to make that request within 28 days. So it is certainly for the mandatory cancellations, it doesn't matter what the offending is. It could be the worst of the worst, or it could be, a lot of my clients are, have, and I don't want to make this sound like it's not serious offending, but relative to other criminal offences, things like stealing money in the course of their employment, things like that, they're treated the exact same way as a murderer. If they're being sentenced to 12 months imprisonment and have to serve the sentence, their visa is going to be automatically cancelled. Where that weighs up at the end of the day is the minister or the delegate will look at, well, how serious is the offending? How long have they lived in Australia? Do they have kids in Australia? What else have they done in Australia since they've been here? And all those kinds of things. So, and one of the important things to kind of say about this is having a visa cancelled isn't the end of the story. A lot of times, especially for mandatory cancellation, it's the start of the process. And one of the things that becomes a big problem is, especially if you can imagine sitting in prison, you're already down on yourself, down on life, not feeling the best about things. For New Zealand citizens, often the first time they know they actually hold a visa is when they're told it's been cancelled, which is not an uncommon thing, because New Zealand citizens, the visa application and grant process is very automatic to the point that you don't even know it's happened. So if you're a New Zealand citizen, when you hand your passport over or you put it into the passport machine, as it is now, when you scan your passport and answer the declarations on the screen, you're taken to make a application for a special category visa. And then once you're allowed to walk through the Photoshop or the look at this level of the thing at the airport, the gate thing, the e-gate, when you walk through the e-gate, you're at that point when you're let through, you're taken to being granted a special category visa. And if you think I'm lying, next time you walk through an e-gate and your face is scanned to let you through, it'll actually say on the e-gate, if you're a New Zealand citizen, you've now been granted a special category visa. But if you're not paying attention, like most of us aren't after a flight, you just want to get out of the airport, you wouldn't really know. So a lot of the times, clients or people that call us will say, I didn't even realize I had a visa until I was told it was cancelled, which is, a lot of people, so a lot of other non-citizens who are in Australia can't fathom how they can't fathom how easy it is for New Zealand citizens to come to Australia, but they can't fathom how New Zealand citizens couldn't even be aware that they have a visa. But, it's pretty easy, especially if you come here as a child and you've only come in when you were 2 or 3 and haven't left. I mean, as far as you know, you've been living here for 20, 30 years and no one's said anything about it before. So why would you think you have a visa?
You think you're true blue.
Exactly. And often, one of the arguments I've made on a few occasions is I've got guys who were born in New Zealand, came to Australia when they were 2 or 3 years old. They go for the Wallabies, and I go, if it's at the administrative appeals tribunal, I go, look, senior member, so and so, he's so Australian that he's going for the Wallabies, even though he could go for the All Blacks. Like, that's how connected he is to Australia. But yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon.
That's a pretty heavy statement. And everything you're saying there, you know, it's one of those things that you just don't pay attention to, and then you realise the seriousness of how we all may be living, you know, for our friends across the Tasman there. If I was to backtrack a little bit and then just ask you personally, like how you organise your day, like because this sounds very stressful, like this is one particular case. And,
Yep.
you know, for me, I just feel my gills start to flare a little bit because of what you're describing, because you're carrying the weight of families' expectations, their hopes and dreams. You know, a significant person in someone's family may be booted across the Tasman.
Yep.
Do you have a good coping process or mechanism, or, you know, personally, you know, we all have stress mechanisms that we use to cope. I'm interested in what's yours.
Look, it's been a process. So my natural response to that is to just throw myself into it every hour of the day, or, you know, as much as I can. So it's not a good combination when you're interested in your work and you also feel an overwhelming obligation to the people you work for to do it, because it means that there's been points over the past few years where my brain has not shifted from how do I solve this problem? What's the best way to deal with it for this guy? Should I have done something different on that case? So, and it still happens now occasionally, but what I've really had to learn and work on myself is setting limits, or accepting that there's only so much I can do, and that ultimately I'm not going to be helpful to anyone if I break down and can't maintain the level of work or can't perform the work I need to do. And so, you know, my work day starts with looking after myself first, making sure that, you know, before 9 o'clock when I start my work day, I've sorted out, you know, my personal life. You know, I wake up at 5:30 every morning, go take my dog out for a walk, come home, make sure I eat well, make sure I start the day, you know, try and make sure the house and everything I need to do in my personal life is sorted out. So by the time I get to work, you know, it's not just every hour of my day, every waking moment is absorbed in what I'm doing.
Yep.
Because, you know, it's been a real struggle for me to not do that, and it's, you know, taken a big toll on me, you know, historically, about being able to manage my, you know, my own condition, let alone the condition of these other people who are relying on me.
Yeah.
So I try and eat healthy. I know you're a big fan of intermittent fasting. I go in and out of intermittent fasting, 16/8 intermittent fasting. I try and stick to a low-carb, high-fat diet as much as I can. It's been a bit hard now with all this coronavirus stuff. You just kind of have to make do with what you can and what you've got left in the house to try and avoid going to the grocery store. But I try to do the best I can, looking after myself physically and making sure that I'm doing everything I can to set myself up for success. And then also learning to shut off at the end of the day as well is another big thing. Because, you know, I'm about to get married. You know, I've got people who rely on me, and, you know, when you're in a relationship with someone, it's no fun for them to see you just not engaging with them, not being present with them, you know. It takes, you know, it's taken a lot of time for me to kind of develop or recognize that, you know, that's an obligation I have as well, is to make sure that my wife is, or my future wife is, you know, that I'm not, you know, harming her by being so caught up with work. You know, but, you know, I'm working on it. I'm trying to do the best I can. So it's been an interesting process.
Look, I think that's really important, because you're taking a lot of you're taking stock of your inventory and you're assessing how things are going. That's really important. You got some great strategies there at the start of the day. What would be a main strategy for you to fall asleep? You know, when I get stressed out, sometimes it's hard to fall asleep because it's hard to turn the computer off. Do you have like one key hack that allows you to sleep, or do you have that as a superpower? You can just switch off, all good.
No, I struggle with it. So I try and limit. I limit looking at my phone. I'll watch TV at night, but I won't look at my phone, because if I look at my phone, there's probably going to be emails there from people and clients that I'm going to feel the need to respond to. I
Yeah.
try and limit that. I put my phone in the bedroom and say I'm not going to look at that till tomorrow morning. Probably shouldn't watch as much TV as I do, but I just try and do something to shift my focus away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I spend a lot of time with my dog Coach at night as well, so patting him before bed, just trying to calm down. And that's something else I've kind of realized is that in order to get out of my own head, a lot of the time is trying to engage with the physical world around me. So whether that's going out and for a walk, or patting Coach, or connecting with Ali, my partner, trying to do things physically so that I'm not just sitting in my own head all day thinking about the possibilities of what might be and what I should have done and what can I do and everything like that. That's the other strategy I try and use, is kind of make sure I'm actually in the moment, doing what I'm doing, connecting with what's around me. Yep. That's a big thing too.
Mate, the premise of positive experience here is living the good, the bad, and the ugly in what we do. And the segment here is the hard slog for businesses, small local businesses. And a lot of running your business and helping a lot of people, helping the community, it comes at your own personal cost. And especially when you're really passionate about it. And I can see that for you. And I think it's something that we're trying to convey to the audience and to the guys that are watching and listening, because it is a hard graft when you're helping people. It does take your life energy. But in saying that, you've got some things that seem to work for you, and you're following your curiosity to learn what else could help improve the way you go about it. And so I just want to pat you on the back, mate, because I can recognize that it is taxing, but you're going to keep soldiering on. So big pat on the back. If I was to switch gears here and then move towards some quickfire questions,
yep.
Put you on the spotlight here. So you've described a lot of the good and some of the challenging things. I wouldn't say it's bad things in your life, but is there a lesson that you've learned from dealing maybe with some of your clients, or an experience you had when you're at university that shaped the way that you are? So what would you be grateful for, Joel?
I'm grateful to have been given the opportunity through, and I've been given a lot of opportunities and had a lot of opportunities open to me that I've taken. I didn't understand at the time how lucky I was to have the opportunities to, go to a pretty good school, go to university and study a degree that was interesting to me, and that lucky that it was an opportunity that then gave me more opportunities down the track. So, I'm always grateful for the things that have led me to the point I am now, where even though it's, it's a difficult thing to manage sometimes between, what I'm doing for work, very few people get to say, I'm really interested in what I get to do. It satisfies a need that I have, that, I do something that's of benefit to other people, and that I'm, doing something that's meaningful to someone else, and I'm doing something meaningful. And also being able to kind of work for myself and be able to, dictate what I do for a living and how I arrange my life and things like that, which are all opportunities I've had, in small part because of, things I've done, but in large part because of opportunities that have just kind of opened up for me. So I feel like I've had those opportunities. I need to do what I can to try and make the most of them for myself, and for everyone else I can try and assist with them.
Great answer. I'm going to ask you, or if I was to whip your phone out of your pocket and check out someone that you're following on Facebook or Instagram, maybe someone for a laugh, who's someone that you're following that leaves an impression on you?
I don't do much social media. I've only got into it over the past since Pacific Connections, because Arma from last week did a presentation. I thought, I really should do more to engage with people on social media. I don't, as much as I'm talking right now, I don't really like talking about myself. I don't like promoting myself, because I feel like when I see other people promoting themselves badly, it's really obvious that, they're just trying to get people to trust them when they're not inherently trustable or trustworthy. So I have a pretty big problem with trying to, put myself out there and promote myself and say, I'm the person you should go with. But I've tried to do that. Someone I'm following, someone I'm following, and this is going to sound like it's disingenuous, but it's true, is that Kylie from Pacific Connections has been putting up translations of all the government issued coronavirus updates and information pages in, I think she does them in Tongan, or someone does them in Tongan.
Yep.
And I think people in Victoria are also doing them in Samoan. But I think it's great that there's someone out there who I know is doing it, just out of the goodness of their heart, not for any huge financial incentive, who's taking the time to do those things, because, it's not as if there's anyone else out there doing it or who would do it or is filling that gap. So I know we met through Pacific Connections and that's how we got connected. So it sounds a bit disingenuous to say, oh, that's the thing that's I've been following, but I'm pretty amazed that like there's people out there willing to do that. And, it makes me think, what things can I do that might seem small to me that will make a kind of big impression? And even if it only helps out one or two people that they get the information, what can I do to try and do those small things that might have a big impact? So I'd say Kylie and Pacific Connections on their Instagram page, I thought that was pretty cool when I saw that the other day.
Man, awesome. Massive shout out to Kylie and the team down there at Pacific Connections. I agree. They're doing great work out there. Man, you're killing these answers. So a little bit of fun here. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. All you want to say is if you're going to fold or if you double down. So for example, would you prefer a night out with the boys, or would you fold and have a night in watching Netflix with Ali?
Hard fold. I'm staying home with Ali.
Homebody. Nothing wrong with that.
Home
I'm
body.
right with you. Okay, free tickets to a Metallica concert. Is that your type of music? Fold or double down?
It's not my type of music, but I would go because, like, it's a bit of an event, I'd be there for the spectacle, not necessarily the music. Like, I'd walk into I don't think I like the music. Not that I've listened to a lot of Metallica, but like they are a big cultural thing. So I think it'd be cool to go and say I've been there, watch the people who are there, learn more about what people out there like. So I'd double down. I'd go.
Good man. Good answer. I haven't got that answer. Okay. How about volunteering at a soup kitchen?
Again, I do it, and not because, the obvious reason is because, it's helpful when I like helping people, but also I think it's important that you don't just stay in your bubble of what you're comfortable with. And a lot of times, it's easy to ignore that there's people out there who have had things run against them and are less fortunate. Or it's easy just for that to be kind of a statement of fact in your head that doesn't bear on how you live your life.
Yeah.
But, I think there's something different about, speaking to people, being in touch with people and seeing what's actually happening out there that really helps you make meaningful changes to both how you're living and how you can help others. Because, obviously, there's people out there who, need soup kitchens and rely on soup kitchens and things like that for food and things like that. Everyone knows that, but that really doesn't seem to change our behavior. But I think if, I were to spend more time doing those things, it would, motivate me to do more.
Yeah, awesome. I had my last question here was, you're down the aisle in Coles and it's the last batch of TP, toilet paper, but I think they've replenished the stocks, so it was a bit rough there for a couple of weeks. Did you have enough stocks at home?
It was rough for about a day. This was back when it was a big issue, but we made it through.
Yeah, I think we all made it through unscathed. I think some people may be a bit ashamed of how they conducted themselves during that time.
I think there'll be what happened during COVID-19 stays with what happened during COVID-19.
Yeah. Mate, we are heading down the home stretch, so I'd love to maybe just finish off with any messages, or, you went through an awesome case study of a large percentage of the type of people that you see. Is there anything that you'd like to share further, or any resources that you have at Century Law that you'd love to chat about?
So on the flip side, which is the kind of not negative side of what I do, because I deal with a lot of New Zealand citizens and their families, I know a little bit about pathways to permanent residency and citizenship for New Zealand citizens. The reason that's important is if you have children who were born in New Zealand and migrated to Australia after their birth, depending on when they've arrived and how many years they've been in Australia and things like that, they might not be eligible to receive a HEX help loan to cover the cost of university. So one of the things, and this came out of talking to my brother, who's a teacher at Groves College in Logan, was that, and I've spoken to a few people across Australia since, is that a lot of times these kids have lived in Australia for less than 10 years, but potentially, since they were 12 or 13 years old, they finished school in Australia, they're intending to go to university to study, law, physio, whatever they were going to study. But it's only when they get to the point of being enrolled in university and get told, oh, because you're not an Australian citizen, you're not eligible for a HEX help loan, so you're going to have to front up the university fees yourself in order to attend. And at that point, it's a lot of money. I think it's like $10,000 a year or something like that at the moment.
Yeah, wow.
On average. And so it's only at that point that people's dream or expectation of going to uni gets taken away from them. So my big thing is, if you are a New Zealand citizen who have kids who are in Australia going through school, please, on my website, centurylaw.com.au, you can book a free consult with me about anything migration law related. But included in that is pathways to citizenship and permanent residency for New Zealand citizens. And I'm very passionate about that because I don't want to have to speak to another 17 or 18-year-old kid who was wanting to go to uni, was expecting to go to uni and couldn't because, their family couldn't find the money to pay for it, with just a lot of money to come up with. And because, they weren't able to get citizenship before they were enrolled in uni. So the sooner you speak to me about that, the better, because the more time we have before your kids get to that point, the more we can do to try and work around it. But it's pretty heartbreaking to see situations like that and speak to people who really want to go on and, do more study and things like that, but unfortunately don't have the opportunity. And also the added benefit is Australian citizens can't have their visas cancelled. And while I'm sure, most people's children won't get into trouble, and as I say to people, as a young man, I made some mistakes, less serious than others, more serious than others. But if you're a New Zealand citizen or your children, especially your sons are New Zealand citizens, young men, we make bad decisions between the ages of 16 and 24 or thereabouts. And it's a tough price to pay because of those decisions, that you're then not able to remain in Australia, or you're permanently excluded from remaining in Australia because of some mistakes you've made during those ages, when it's the same mistakes that Australian citizen kids or young men would have made as well. So
Gotcha.
Citizenship protects you from those, or protects you and your children from the threat of visa cancellation, which is, again, difficult to tell people because you don't want to imply that their children are going to end up being criminals. But, things happen. No one intends to, go out and get into a fight and, bad things happen. But, as I say, young people, I know I certainly made mistakes when I was young, and luckily nothing came of them. But, it's only by the grace of God that, I got through that period of my life and didn't do something stupid or, get into a fight with someone I shouldn't have got into a fight with, and my life could have turned on its head. So, sorry to give you an extended answer, but the point is, if you're in Australia and you're a non-citizen, even if you just want to say hello to me, book a free consult on the website. I'm happy to speak to anyone about anything, even if it's not about immigration law. Got know some people I can try and point you in the right direction as well. And I'm a big believer that people should be given, even if you can't afford for a lawyer to act for you, that shouldn't mean you're not getting the information to act for yourself or do the best yourself. There's a big difference between not being able to afford a lawyer to be able to act for you and then not being able to afford just getting the information to find out what you need to do to protect your family's interests or your interests. So I'm a big believer in, I'll tell you everything you need to know in order to do it yourself, even if you can't afford to pay me to do it for you. Because I don't think money should be the thing that stops you from being able to effectively do what you need to do.
Jeez, there you have it. Gold nuggets from Big Man Joel. So just one last thing to clarify. So these are conversations you can have on the phone, or is it also fronting up and meeting you in the office for the initial
No, so I can do it. I do them all. So I'm based in Brisbane, but more than half my clients now are from outside of Brisbane. So a lot in Western Australia, Sydney, Melbourne. So I'm really used to using Zoom for video conferencing, doing them on the phone. So yeah, no, you can be anywhere in Australia, and I can speak to you on the phone via video conference. If you've got a family and you want to all be involved in a teleconference or video conference, we can set that up.
Great to know.
Yeah, and even if you've got family in New Zealand or outside of Australia, I'm happy to speak to them as well. So yeah, happy to speak to. If people want to talk to me, I'll talk to them.
Awesome. That's the best plug. So, Joel, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really insightful. I'd love to have a part 2 at some point, maybe 6 months, 12 months down the track, just to catch up and say hello. But for a lot of the expertise and the knowledge that you shared with us today, it's greatly appreciated. I guess in finishing up, the phone number, is there an area code for the phone number in Brisbane?
No, so I've got a 1300 number, so you can call it anywhere across Australia. So it's 1300 148 652. You can call that from anywhere in Australia. I think it's cost of a local call for the 1300 number. So you get through to me. Otherwise, you can check out our website at sentrylaw, sentrylaw.com.au. You can get all our contact details from there, and that's where you can book in about 2 minutes. You can book a free initial consultation. There's times available between about 7:30 in the morning and 7:30 at night, so that if you're working 9 to 5, you can't call me during the day. I can try and be flexible to try and speak to you at a time you're available as well. And then Instagram, I'm trying to work on my social media. So Instagram, I think it's SentryLawAU or Sentry_law.
I'll get that out.
You'll know when you see it. Yeah.
Awesome. Joel, thank you so much for your time, mate. We'll connect again for round 2. And as always, go the Wallabies.
Yeah, thanks, Lucky.
Cheers, mate. See ya.